line, but yeah, it's fine.
All right, so you wanted this like preliminaries. Let's just get clear on the position. So initially, you said that you take it to be the case that non-cognitivist semantics are better than rivaling theories of semantics, presumably of moral utterance discourse.
Yep.
Okay, and then what sort of non-cognitivist semantics are you taking?
Well, we could just say, or yeah. All right. Well, are you familiar with the typical meta-ethical view that I hold to?
No. Apart
Well,
from
okay, yeah.
non-cognitive.
I'm gonna okay. So I'm gonna I'm going to explain the view. And then after, I'm going to get into the meta semantics of the view, because I think that the view itself and the semantics tie into each other. So, are you familiar with a fictionalist quasi-expressivist view?
I'm familiar with fictionalism and quasi-expressivism. Are you talking about like Simon Blackburn / Alan Gibbard sorts of view?
mm, yeah. So, do you understand the conjunctions that are being put in there, or no?
Well, fictionalism is going to say something like, like moral properties or that sort of thing are fictional. They're like useful fiction, so we should continue to use them, that sort of thing. And then quasi-expressivism is like this attempt at, synchronizing this expressivist view of moral utterances where, you take the case that moral utterances express cognitive attitudes with the sort of appearance of propositional behavior. Right? That's
Yeah,
what
I can barely hear him. All right, all right, okay, cool. Yeah, yes. So, do you want me to explain the core semantic thesis that I'm just going to be committing myself to?
Yeah, just states it.
Okay.
Fine.
Yeah. So, I understand that the conventional function of moral language is not to represent any type of stance-independent moral facts, but we really just want to facilitate practical coordination and usage, and express and evaluate attitudes, and then and the structure of normative discussions. So the appearance of moral truth and moral facthood is it's just going to be best understood as a useful quasi-realist fiction generated from expressive practices.
Okay. Sweet. So I got that written down. So there are
Mm-hmm.
two problems I have, or like one thing I have to say, and then one problem I have. First thing I have to say is that I don't see why you can't achieve this conventional function with a sort of descriptivist semantics if you take a motivational externalist view. So I'll just explain what I mean by that. So descriptivist semantics is just a way of saying that when you have a moral utterance, also, can you mute your mic, please? Your mic is like acting background noise.
Sorry.
But yeah, so a descriptivist semantics is going to say something like, when we utter a moral sentence, we're aiming to describe the world. I personally take a representationalist view of moral utterances and moral semantics. So you use like mode operators and stuff like that to represent certain things. Okay. And then a motivational externalist view to say something like, we are motivated, or at least the way I'm using it is just to say something like we apprehend a belief, and when we apprehend the truth of some belief, or apprehend the truth of some proposition, sorry, we are motivated, some desire is generated, and that motivates us. And so it seems like if I give you a belief or a proposition, so I say something like, look, get out the house because, I don't know, the house is burning, right? That's a proposition. The house is burning, but it might elicit some sort of motivation externally, and that might make you behave in some way that's practical or whatever. So that's the first thing I just wanted to clarify. And then the second thing is, how do you respond to embedding problems, 3D each problems, um, particularly the embedding problem and the negation problem? I think are pretty damning for this sort of view. If you don't really know what those are, I can explain that to you as well.
Okay, yeah, I'm gonna respond to the first point, then we can get into the embedding problems. So look, I'm not disagreeing that descriptive semantics can explain the practical function and the effects on moral discourse. Okay, my claim isn't about that. My claim isn't saying that coordination or the disagreement or the motivation even are going to be impossible on a descriptive view. That's not the claim that I'm making there. But the claim that I'm making is that the fictionalist expressivist explains those types of those types of phenomenons without positing any stance independent moral facts, and therefore there would be greater theoretical theoretical economy there. So the question No. The question isn't whether descriptive semantics can account for moral language. That's not what we're putting into question there. It's whether it's the case that the representational usage in the moral truth makers is going to posit something that's explanatorily necessary. So if the expressive practices can generate the same truth talk and disagreements and the inferential behavior, then the realist view is they're going to posit more they're going to have more ontological costs without corresponding to explanatory usage there. And then for the embedding problem, please remind me of that. Those types of problems there.
Yeah, no problem. So there's just one thing I want to highlight, and it's that when we agreed on debating, you said like 3 times on 3 different occasions we're talking about moral semantics. So I'm not very clear on why I should be interested in like realist talk. Like I don't really care. You can have some sorts of views that are cognitivist that are anti-realist, right? You could be, for example, an error theorist. You could be a subjectivist. These views are not realist, at least not conventionally. Nonetheless, they are still, cognitivist. So if we're talking about semantic theses, as in what you said here is that you're affirming that the non-cognitivist semantic thesis is going to be better than other rivaling views. Presumably, we're going to be talking about the semantic thesis, not ontological thesis or like what you're committed to existentially. So I'm not really interested in the rate.
Wait, I'm going to interrupt you right there respectfully.
Hold on, wait,
because...
hold on. I wasn't done.
Yeah, let him get that point out.
Yeah, I mean, now that I finished, right? You can tell me, is it long? Because I wanted to get to the other stuff you said.
Well, no, I was just going to respond by saying when we're talking about semantic thesis, obviously we want to pick certain types of views that are going to fit better or be more compatible with theoretical virtues like parsimony. That's why I started talking about the ontological commitments that we're making there.
Okay, yeah, no problem. I still think that's a confusion because the semantic thesis says nothing about what you're ontologically committed to, right? You could take a cognitivist view and be an error theorist, and the error theorist is not committed to any sort of moral properties. So they have a very good ontological economy or theoretical economy, whatever you want to call it. But nonetheless, they have a cognitivist view. And so if what you're challenging me for is this sort of lack of theoretical economy, I could just defend some sort of error theory or just posit an error theory, in which case I have the same theoretical economy as you, but a differing semantic thesis, which is the point. But that's besides the point. I think I've already established that that was a confusion. The second thing I wanted to say is you said that, I think you have to just revise this thing here where you said the claim is that the fictional quasi-expressivist can explain the types of moral phenomena without positing stance-independent moral facts, because I think this elaborates on the confusion a bit more. All I'm saying is that a cognitivist reading of moral semantics is better representative of what people are actually trying to do. And so it just matches better. It's more likely that, moral sentences are propositional, that sort of, which disagrees directly with the non-cognitivist semantic thesis. Okay. So since you said you don't disagree that descriptivists can explain, and I'll give my reasons for why I think that a cognitivist semantic thesis is better than a non-cognitivist one. I think the primary reason is because when we can just do like a Bayesian update here, and we can look at the evidence, and the evidence is that, moral sentences seem to behave propositionally. So they can be embedded in like conditionals and in certain truth preserving relations. For example, I can say like, murder is wrong and stealing is wrong. Or I can say if murder is wrong, then paying someone to murder is wrong. And so they can feature in these sorts of, truth preserving relations there, or between truth preserving connectives. And they can be negated. So I can say it's not the case that murder is wrong, which typically non-propositional things cannot be negated in that way. And so, common adage here: if it looks like a duck, talks like a duck, walks like a duck, probably is a duck. Same way, if it behaves propositionally, does everything a proposition does, it probably is a proposition. So I just think that raises my posteriors in believing it's a proposition. And then the task for you is to explain how they can behave propositionally and yet not be propositions. So how can we engage in moral arguments all the time and seemingly give valid arguments, but how can you explain that in a non-cognitivist view because they're non-propositional? Then how's there any validity? That sort of thing. So I guess we can talk about embedding problems first because it's another problem, but I think it's a bit much. So you can talk about that
first. Okay, yeah. So, the first response I'm going to give is going to be pertaining to when we were talking about when we're talking about the ontological commitments there. So you understand that within like meta semantics, obviously we want to pick a view that's going to be most compatible with theoretical virtue. So that's why I started bringing up ontological commitments. You dog shit ass nigga, like what the fuck is he talking about? This guy's actually fucking bad. But look, yeah, we can respond to the free each problem. So I mean, just in the standard way that the free each problem is presented, this is my response to it. So it only refutes like that type of view, or sorry, that type of objection only just refutes like emotivism itself. But if I'm committing myself to a fictionalist quasi-expressivist view, that is going to explicitly allow moral discourse to possess proposition like logical structures. So the fact that moral claims embed under conditionals shows that they participate, or that they participate in inferential relations, not that they not that they represent stance independent moral facts. So the quasi-realist semantics explains those inferential relations while avoiding any type of realist ontological commitments that you're making there. And then, sorry, okay, so did you already explain the embedding problem? Because I'm sorry, I wasn't listening, like my mom was talking to me.
Yeah, no, I can explain it again.
Okay, yeah.
So embedding problems, what they seek to do is sort of raise this issue regarding why, moral sentences can be embedded, and, feature in arguments and that sort of thing if they are not propositional, right? This sort of thing where, we can seemingly give an argument about morality, like something like, if murder is wrong, then paying someone to murder is wrong, and then just doing modus ponens from there. That seems valid. And as a matter of fact, this sort of argument appears all the time in moral discourse. Um, Nonetheless, the non-cognitivist here who denies propositions is going to be hard pressed to explain how you can preserve this validity without accepting truth. Because if you think, moral sentences are non-propositional, then they're not truthfully valuable. And so you have to give this other account of validity where you can sort of preserve this validity-like structure without appealing to truth, which is very difficult. And I understand that quasi-expressivism is designed to sort of preserve propositional-like behavior of moral utterances without committing themselves to the sort of truth evaluability. However, you haven't actually explained what the view is, right? You just said, I'm a quasi-expressivist. I have disagreements with certain, also, there's another thing you said. You said something like, this is only applicable to like emotivism, but a lot of quasi-realists are also emotivists. Quasi-expressivists are also emotivists. Like, for example, fairly sure Alan Gibbard is an emotivist. Pretty sure Simon Blackburn is an emotivist. I mentioned those two prior. And so this idea that you like, I don't know what that was meant to mean, but like all I want to know is how do you account for it? So maybe we can start here. Like, what do you mean when you say murder is wrong? Like, what does that translate to under your semantics?
Yeah, okay. We're just gonna, all right, I'm gonna respond that we're gonna move on from this point because I already answered. I already explained that I already explained that the semantics under quasi-realism, which is also something that, what's his name, Simon Blackburn holds to. I explained to you that's I already explained to you that the way that like how quasi-realism like handles those types of things, and the inferential, or sorry, the truth talk there, and the inferential structure. I already explained to you that we're only making expressivist commitments. And we can still accept the logical data, and it could still explain that type of thing through these expressivist commitments. So we're just gonna move on from that point because I already clearly answered it, and I don't really want to keep going back on it.
No,
So
but
go
what
ahead.
I'm asking is how, right? How is it that the quasi-expressivist does this?
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's fine. So look, if okay, I just want to be clear that the okay, so maybe the question is like, okay, what makes the view semantic, or sorry, what makes the view semantic rather than psychological? Um you could just say that moral sentence, or moral statements or moral sentences mean whatever the emotion somebody else happens to feel. So we're just saying there that the moral language that's being used is, or has some type of stable convention, or public convention that's governing endorsement, like disagreement and inference and commitments there. So I just want to be clear. You could just say that you're representational about semantics, or even say that you're an expressivist, or sorry, expressive pragmatist about these semantics there. So how we're explaining that is that the meaning of moral language is going to be grounded within the normative domain or role, and it plays in our linguistic practices rather than in rather within a certain relation of corresponding to stance independent facts.
I mean, like, this is a confusion. So I'll just clarify this. This is completely and wholly disconnected from any particular theory of truth. It's like I need not take a correspondence theory of truth. So when he said, corresponding to some like external world or whatever, corresponding to some facts, that's pretty much irrelevant. Um, Additionally, you mentioned that you could just take a representationalist view. I don't think you can because representationalist semantics usually takes propositions to be sets of worlds. And so, like for example, you would say, something is consistent if, or two propositions are consistent if there is some world where they are both true, for example. But that's a truth evaluable notion, like it is a notion of truth implicitly. So I don't know how you could take a conventional representationalist semantics and divorce yourself from truth, which is the point. How do you preserve validity without in some way appealing to truth? You mentioning these views, right, isn't helpful in understanding how you preserve the appearance of validity in moral arguments, the appearance of validity when they feature in these sorts of things without appealing to truth. So I think what would be more linear to do, I sent an argument here, a very standard, typical argument. Can you just tell me how you translate this from natural language to your own moral semantics? So, like, what does it mean to say if murder is wrong, then paying someone to murder is wrong? We can start there. That was your
She
piece
said her
before.
mom's in the room right now. Oh, okay.
Yeah, that
Okay,
was
yes,
supposed.
sorry, I'm sorry. So
Should I repeat what I
please,
said?
I heard some of what you said. You asked how do we preserve the validity under the under the semantic thesis?
Yeah, like so the rough idea is this, right? So you mentioned briefly that you could take a representationalist view. Now, the issue is that with representationalist views is that conventionally speaking, they involve truth. So, for example, a representationalist conventionally will take a proposition to be a set of worlds. And so to say, for example, that two propositions are consistent is to say something like, there are these worlds where these propositions are both true, right? Or to say, like, I think I have notes on this somewhere, but I can't be able to get them out. Look, the rough idea is just that I can agree you might be able to take some representationalist semantics. The issue is what you're replacing truth with there, right? Such that you can preserve the validity of arguments that are given. And so I sent an argument, just so we can stay very linear, right? I sent an argument and I want you to translate this into non-cognitivist semantics, like what it means for the conditional to be true, what it means for the antecedent to be true, what it means for the concept, like what do those things mean?
Yeah, so I think that like me trying to translate the sentence into or trying to translate the sentence in some type of non-cognitive sense, I think that's pointless, but I can respond to the point about how we preserve validity and the truth there. So look, the validity is going to be preserved through the stable and inferential and the normative commitments, like I said before. So while the truth, and we could just say that the truth is going to be preserved within like a quasi-realist expressivist or in the expressivist practices. And neither of that's going to neither of those types of views require any stance independent moral facts. And the logical structure or the logical features of moral discourse are they can easily be explained without any type of realist ontological commitments there. So and like even like even the freaky Geach problem, the freaky Geach problem, it's still like it shows that I need semantic stability and not like the actual, like not the factual ontological commitment of stance independent moral facts. And fictionless quasi-expressivism, it provides the semantic stability through inferential roles and preserves the truth talk through quasi-expressivist, quasi-realist expressivist resources. So look, all I'm saying, and we can just conclude after this because I don't think, I think that I responded adequately to all his points. I don't think that this is really getting anywhere. So this is going to be my last response, and he can respond, and we could just conclude. So obviously, like when you say what replaces truth, I don't even know what that means. But I already responded to the validity point, and I don't think anything replaces the truth. Like what I reject is the realist explanation of what truth is. And moral truth is understood through, like, it could just be understood through a minimalist or a quasi-realist account, grounded within normative commitments grounded within normative commitments within a normative domain and expressive practices rather than corresponding to any stance independent moral facts. Just go on mute real quick. I gotta talk to my mom.
Should I just wait for it to return? I mean, I'm pretty comfortable concluding, but I also want to get clear that she has no intent of translating the sentence because I think that's pretty damning, right? Like, I'm not even sure she knows what she's talking about. I mean, I'll just wait.
Wait, can you tell me where you put the sentence?
You said what?
Did you like give her a sentence?
Yeah, I gave her an argument, and she said, "I think it's pretty pointless to translate it, but I can give my explanation." Like, I don't know how that's pointless. The whole point.
No, I'm saying, like, did you post it?
Yeah, I posted. I can post it again.
Yeah.
This is it.
Put it in bot comments. Oh, okay, sorry.
We're gonna wait for her to complete her conversation with her mother. She's mum, by the way. She can hear me. Oh my god. Well,
Make sure you guys vote for the winner in the debate polls
shut your
and
mouth,
leave your
man.
opinions.
Shut your mouth.
Anyways,
Shut your mouth.
I'm back. I literally
Alright,
heard
so
everything this dumb bitch.
can I just clarify that you have no intention of just telling me what you say murder is wrong?
All right, bro. That's look. Okay, so you said that. Okay, you want me to translate this in a non-cognitive way?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Let me read the sentence. Okay, if murder is wrong, then paying someone to murder is wrong. Murder is wrong. You can. Well, look, we could. I accept that the inference is valid. What I'm rejecting here is that the assumption that the validity requires any type of moral propositions is to represent these states of independent moral facts. That's the thing
Yeah,
that I'm rejecting there. So unless you can motivate that, then it seems no reason to accept that in some type of or that these types of things require moral proposition. So on my view, the argument can
yeah.
track consistently, or the relations can track consistently among normative commitments there rather than making any types of relations among moral facts.
Yeah, okay, so I think I already responded sufficiently to the stuff about the facts and the moral facts specifically. Can you just tell me what you translate the sentence to mean? You keep mentioning that you have access to these quasi-expressivist machineries, but you're not using them in the debate to articulate and defend your position. So can you just tell me what you mean when you say murder is wrong? You said you accept the validity of the inference, but the only understanding of validity I have that would preserve the sort of inference here would be one related to truth evaluability because you haven't offered another one, right? So, yeah, can you just tell me, or do you think that you don't have to? We can conclude, I suppose.
Okay, yeah, we can. I'll just give a response and then we can just conclude here. So, like, under a quasi fictionalist expressivist view, like, we're not. I don't. You're not really translating that murder is wrong into a factual claim or like saying it's even about a moral property there. What I'm just interpreting as, oh, I endorse or we ought to endorse a norm that is condemning murder. That's what I'm interpreting as. Or you can even say that murder is something that you should disprove of according to the normative framework that I accept. Um, so there we understand that we are using normative constraints there, and within the normative domain, we are going to make normative commitments such that you don't necessarily need to talk about you don't necessarily need to commit yourself that there are stance independent facts.
Yeah, okay, so I think I already matched the stance dependent facts, and I just want to clarify that the translation you gave still takes the form of a proposition, like I endorse or we ought to endorse still appears propositional. So I think my previous arms of the view still hold. So I think we can wrap this up. I'll give my closing. So, look, my closing is just this. So we started off the debate, clarifying some things, preliminaries, whatnot. I then articulated my argument for a cognitivist semantics, which is just to say that basically, moral utterances behave propositionally, right? They have propositional behavior. They can be embedded, they can feature in arguments that appear valid. and they can be negated, this sort of thing. So similarly to like the common adage where if it looks like a duck, walks like a duck, talks like a duck, it must be a duck. If it looks, behaves, blah 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 proposition, it probably is one. So that just strengthened my posteriors. I actually don't disagree that descriptivist semantics can represent moral language. Her contention was something relating to parsimony, like the amount of entities I'm committed to. But I clarified very swiftly that cognitivist semantics and non-cognitivist semantics are silent on the sorts of entities you're committed to. So you can be a cognitivist, for example, and be committed to entities. Might not be, you might be an error theorist and be committed to no moral entity. In which case, you'd be in the same position as someone that just is a non-cognitivist and denies moral properties at all. So I didn't think the parsimony stuff was that strong. And then we discussed embedding problems for a little bit. She said she could take a representation of semantics. I highlighted to her that the problem is that understanding validity is quiet, right? How do you understand and preserve validity in inferences without appealing to truth is a problem, each problem, because presumably moral utterances can feature and appear valid. She said she could use representation semantics. I clarified to her that conventional representation semantics are based on truth value propositions. They take to be sets of worlds where certain things are true or false. She then said she has access to quasi-expressivist machinery. I asked her to utilize it, and she said, I translate the sentence murder is wrong as something like he ought to endorse not murdering or something. But that's obviously propositional, right? Like that takes rather I should say, that takes a propositional form. So my previous argument that, if it looks like a proposition, behaves like a proposition, that idea still applies to the translation. So it doesn't really reduce it to something that does not have the same propositional behavior or same propositional form. So I think overall, I demonstrated that my position is more likely given certain facts about how more sentences behave. I think Ash was ill-equipped to dispatch the arguments that I gave against her view, namely the embedding problem. Yeah, man.
That was a great debate, guys.
Guys, hold
Pathos,
on.
what
I
you
need to
think?
give closings. But I'm
Oh, my
talking to my
bad.
mom right now. Give me.
Make sure you
All right,
guys
well,
vote for the winner. Oh,
this is pretty awkward, man. Let's just ignore Nini. This is pretty awkward.
All right.
So,
Anyways, let me give my response because I don't know why C thought he was slick. I'm about to. Yeah. Look. So my closing, you could just like. I'm not even gonna lie. My opponent here, it was definitely a good faith debate, and I do respect C for being very good faith. However, I think that I don't even think that like he was giving really good objections to the view. I already responded to every single objection I gave. I responded to the betting problem. I responded to the freaky geach problem, and also explained why it's the case that these moral semantics that I'm going to be going under, the ones I'm going to be committing myself to, is going to be the best in terms of whether it's the case that we want to make certain types of ontological commitments, or even certain types of like just commitments that seem unnecessary. But yeah, I think it was pretty good. I respect the good faith debates. Kind of refreshing. I really, yeah, I think that C's a pretty good debater. And I just want to thank him for keeping shit respectful. Thank you so much.
that was so sweet of you. Okay, now Pathos, give her this.
Oh shit, guys. Don't want the truth. Yeah, I mean, given what I've captured here, I think it's pretty evident to me that C won this conversation. I think that Ash's initial being that we want to have a position that is less ontically tactical